Hello everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, and today it is time once again for my sporadically recurring series Time Warp Tuesday, in which I grab an old reading journal and see what I was up to in my reading life at some random time in my past. So if you haven't seen this series before, I've done a few of them. I kind of started, I think maybe I've done two. It's not really like I've been doing it for years, but it was an idea I just had at some point because I've been keeping a reading journal for 23, 24 years, I don't know. But anyway, it's a paper journal. I have them all, and so I thought it'd be fun to randomly grab one and see what I was reading in that particular season that correlates to where we are today and what my thoughts were. Do I remember the books? Whatever. That I have found out that memory is a slippery thing. There's books that I've had no memory of, or I've been shocked to find out I read, or other ones that are still very vivid. So it's kind of interesting. And then to see my changes in my taste. In this particular case, the one that I grabbed is this cute little blue journal from 2003. So it is 20 years ago. I think this is the farthest back that I have gone in these videos so far. And I flipped through it just enough to find out where the fall part kind of begins. I know that 20 years ago for me was a big fall because I went back to work after taking 2 school years off. I had been teaching 6th grade reading, but I had, right at the end of that, I had started studying, doing my library science degree. And then I stayed home for 2 school years when my daughter was born. And I was taking classes mostly online. I had to do some in-person stuff. And then on this fall in 2003, I got a new job and I went back to work as a school librarian. And so I was in a new position for me in a different district than before. And I was still taking classes. And I had a 2-year-old. So I don't know how there was any reading and anything in a journal, unless I made it all up. But somehow I must have been reading in the dead of night because there's evidence of reading having occurred. Something was not getting done that I was sitting around reading a book instead. But my personality has been consistent over the years. So let's see. Let's just open it up and find out. Oh, and on the note of the 20 years ago today reference, I talked in a different video about when Emma as a toddler was obsessed with that book with all the creepy dolls. Well, at that same age, which is right about what we're talking about, that she turned 2 that fall, she was also obsessed with the Sgt. Pepper album cover. She loved to look at all of the faces in this picture, and we taught her the names of the people that we knew, like the band members, plus some of the celebrities or famous people in the pictures, and we would do like a little treasure hunt, and she would find them. So anecdote. All right, kind of focus. Let's open up the journal and see what was happening 20 years ago. All right, so the first one was The Confessions of Max Tivoli by Andrew Sean Greer. Now, when he came out with the book Less, I read that book and I thought it was funny. I enjoyed it. I didn't read the sequel to it because the reviews were very mixed. But when I went to look at those books, I was really shocked to discover that he wrote this book, because I did remember that I had read it and I didn't really like it. And it is so different in subject matter and tone than Less that I don't even see how the same person wrote these 2 books. But this was a book about a man who, when he was born, he looks like an old man, and then he ages backwards, and he keeps seeking out this same woman that he's in love with over the years. And I think maybe it doesn't work out well in the different times. Like, so he is aging, he's maturing in his mind, but his body's aging backwards, so that he's a kid or a young man at the end, but he was old at the beginning. I don't know. But here's what I said. I didn't like this too much, but it held me enough to stick with it. Everybody in this book loved the wrong person. And then it goes on. So I think I read the whole thing, but I wasn't really into it. That's kind of my takeaway memory of it, was that it was just, I think I liked the idea. The premise sounded great to me, but then I didn't like it. Some books on that theme of mismatches in time, or somebody aging, not aging, going back, all that kind of thing. I've read, I guess I'm drawn to that again and again. And there's books that I've liked better that play around with that, such as The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, or How to Stop Time. Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, How to Stop Time by Matt Haig, both play around with that idea of moving through time and wanting to love someone, but you're not progressing at the same rate as them, and all that kind of stuff. All right, let's move on. Then I read a book that I still have, so I'm gonna go grab it. All right, I read The Known World by Edward P. Jones. So when did this come out? Did I read it as a new release? Yes. So I think I know I thought I used to have a copy of it, but maybe it was a library book, because I just recently bought this at a used bookstore because I would like to read it again. I have thought about it a lot over the years. And when back in the day, I said, this book seemed a little tedious at first, but then it really grew on me. The whole idea of Black people owning slaves was fascinating. So many things to think about: the relationships between the owners, the slaves, everyone's attitudes about slavery. So, and in this book, this is the case. There are freed Black people who do own slaves, who have very mixed feelings about the approach of emancipation. It was just a topic that I had never thought about, and it was very fascinating. All right, the next one is a book I don't remember the details of this book, but I remember enjoying it in the spirit of it. And it was called Apprentice to the Flower Poet Z by Debra Weinstein. I don't know if she's written any other books besides this one. This isn't an author that I've remained familiar with. But this was a book about a young woman who thinks that she has scored this incredible job in an English department. It's about people in a poetry department, and she scores a position to be the apprentice to this renowned, eccentric poet. And it turns out to not be what she thought it was going to be. And my comments include, this was a quick and fun read. The perfect audience is fellow survivors of English departments, because I did get a graduate degree in English. There have been quite a few funny, scathing books in this vein, often from the insider view as a faculty member. Of course, this is a view from a student. I found it funny, highly believable, including all the backstabbing, the freaks, imposters, egomaniacs, and the doormats. So I think it was a satire of English departments. I remember the poet lady was super weird, and she was the egomaniac, and she had all these crazy requests that would send the apprentice off on all of these really difficult chores and errands to find very esoteric particular brands of ink, because she wrote with a quill pen. And I think her personal life was in all kinds of drama and disarray. And of course, as an undervalued and disrespected apprentice, she saw everything and she was disillusioned. So I think it was kind of an English department version of The Devil Wears Prada. That was just kind of a funny book. And then, oh no, this was a fad that I went through in my reading. So remember, after the Da Vinci Code, there was a whole flurry of books that were about mysteries involving ancient documents or literature or codes or old, revered institutions and things like that. There was just a bunch of things that came out on the coattails. It was sort of a precursor to the dark academia trend. But I got swept up in some of these books. And so I read The Rule of Four by Ian Caldwell and Dustin Thomason. I think that Dustin Thomason has written other thrillers, and I don't know about Ian Caldwell. but they wrote it together. They were friends that both graduated from an Ivy League. This one was set at Princeton or Harvard or one of those, and I just remember. Let's see what I said. Let's see. The book was really more about friendship and the turning point of adulthood, with some code cracking and a cheesy murder plot thrown in. The murders didn't make much sense. It's blah blah blah. There's a bunch of questions. Entertainment novel with some scholarly stuff mixed in. So I think it was for me, it was a pretty disposable read. I just remember I read several of those, and most of them were not very satisfying. Let me know if you went through that trend of reading those hidden code, hidden thing, deep in the archives books that were from the early 2000s. So yeah, that's all I can say about that one. All right, so the next one was Maisie Dobbs, and I think it was the first one, and that was another little thing. I read several of the Maisie Dobbs books, and then at some point I got bored or trailed off, or there was too big of a space between them, and I lost the thread. But I did read the first few of those, and I did enjoy them. And I think that the series is still going, if I'm not mistaken. So Jacqueline Winspear is the author. So let me know if you like the Maisie Dobbs books, if you're still reading them. So this was the first one, and I said I enjoyed this detective book. Maisie's story was more interesting than the place she was investigating. I liked the structure, going back and forth in time at the turning points. The role of intuition in Maisie's detecting is almost overplayed, but not quite. And then I go on into some spoiler type things. I don't remember much about them. I know that they're set in between the world wars. I don't know if the series is really long now. I don't know if it went ahead into the next war or not, but it was the post-World War I era, and that whole historical aspect of it I remember enjoying quite a lot. Then Codex by Lev Grossman. This was a fun, engrossing book, yet another entry in the manuscript mysteries genre that has popped up. Okay, manuscript mysteries. I guess I gave the trend a name. All of them seem to have confused men, sketchily developed women, and half-baked conclusions. Okay, then why did I keep reading them? This one did not have murders or really any crime. It was about Edward getting off track, yearning to chuck it all, and failing. So I don't even remember what happened in this book. I think some dude had a weird job, and he had to try to find something in an archive, and then there was a woman, and it was probably one of those books where it was really obvious that the woman wasn't what she seemed, but the guy couldn't figure it out until, the end of the book. I am going to read my summary remark, and it is a spoiler. So if you suddenly have a burning desire to read Codex, don't listen to this remark, but you probably don't. So here we go. So Edward had a weird vacation, got laid, solved a mystery, and got dissed by a nutty rich lady, and ended up with a job in London and a case full of money. Sounds like a happy ending to me. And that also sounds like a pretty crummy book. All right, finally we get to a good one. It says, okay, this is the last one. At least we're going to end on a good note. This is a book I actually have, so I'm going to go get it. So this was, whoops, there's a note stuck to it. This was The Amateur Marriage by Anne Tyler. And I say in here that this was one of her best. I still think, 20 years later, I still think this is one of her strongest novels. I've read a lot of Anne Tyler books. I haven't read every single one, but I've probably read most of them. And she's been pretty reliable. A bad Anne Tyler book is just kind of forgettable. It's sort of like, okay, that just kind of came and went and didn't even stick with me. But the good ones kind of sneak in and stay. I don't know what that was. It just fell out of the book. I said this was one of her best. I liked the darker tone, the uneasy ending. I do like an askew ending. Pauline truly expected to be loved even through her wild ride of behavior, and only a man as steady as Michael stood a chance of loving and enduring her, yet his steadfastness infuriated her. What if she had married another volatile person? That's in. I've read books like that too, where two volatile people collide that probably shouldn't be together. That's another kind of story. Anyway, it is. I think it is about a second marriage and the differences in the partnerships, and the fact that you still have those connections or relationship to the first marriage if you have children with that person. So that's what I recall from this book, and that I liked it a lot. Okay, the thing that fell on the floor is a list of middle grade authors. So it has my name on there. This was a work related thing. I don't know what I was doing with all of these authors. It says Avi, Christopher Paul Curtis, Karen Cushman, Sharon Creech, Virginia Ewer-Wolf, Lois Lowry, Peg Carrot, Phyllis Reynolds Naylor, Margaret Peterson Haddix. And then there's a line, and then there's picture book authors. Okay, I guess I was, you know what? I was probably doing collection development. I was probably checking, because I was new in that job, I was probably checking authors that I thought were significant and seeing if this library was missing books to order. That's my best guess. All right, so that is my time warp for this particular time. I'll probably do another fall of some other year time warp, maybe next month. So let me know if you've read any of the books I talked about today, or if you can remember something that you read 20 years ago, and we can talk about that. I hope that you are having a great reading week, and I will be back soon. Bye-bye.